and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, August 23rd, 2021. Our next Board of Education meeting will be held on September 13th. Jeannie, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Fosdick.
Here.
Ms. Jane.
Here.
Mr. Karubis.
Here.
Mr. Rising.
Here.
Ms. Donahue.
Here.
Ms. Grover.
Here.
Ms. Deming.
Present.
We have a quorum. Mr. Karubis, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is now time for public comment. 60 minutes is allowed for public comment, and each person is limited to 3 minutes. When addressing the board, we ask that you respect the confidentiality and safety of our students and school district personnel. We also ask that those addressing the board be cognizant that this is an open meeting and is available to all age groups, and as such, ask that you consider the audience members who they are this evening and keep comments age appropriate. Public comment represents the voice and opinion of the speaker. There will be no feedback from the board members during the meeting, but follow-up will be provided by administrator as appropriate. I'll also remind this public speaker and people that we need to have masks on in the building. So we have 2 speakers tonight. The first is Aisha Smith. Alicia. Thank you.
Nope, not a problem. I try to do it phonetically on there.
I
but
know, I'm
I
not
don't-
good with that.
It
though.
didn't help.
My
so
engineering background.
That's okay. Hello, members of the school board and the District 204 committee. I'm sorry, the 204 community. My name is Alicia Smith, and I'm here to speak again about inequities in our 204 elementary schools due to our low-income disparities. As I have previously stated, District 204 has a low-income percentage of 16%, yet we have 2 elementary schools in our district that have greater than 40% low-income population, Georgetown and Longwood. At the previous school board meeting that I was at, I stated that both District 203 and 204 had the same percentage of low-income students in their districts, which is 16%. Yet, District 203 has 0 elementary schools that have a low-income percentage composition greater than 40%. Another nearby school district, St. Charles, has a low-income percentage of 14%. Yet St. Charles also has 0 elementary schools that have a low-income percentage of greater than 40%. I was encouraged by the boundary committees, or one of their guiding principles, which was ensure equitable student experiences at each school. And I was also encouraged by the fact that 74% of the boundary committee believe that demographic variables should be considered in building composition. I sincerely hope that the boundary committee and the school board will work to make District 204 more equitable by eliminating these large disparities of low-income students in 204 elementary schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Pratinama Kamalnathan. Can you tell me how to correctly say
Thank
it?
you. You tried very hard. I am Pratima Kamalanathan. It's probably easier to call me Priti. Good evening, everyone, especially the board members here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to represent my voice. I'm a parent with IPSD 204 district. I'm here to see if there is an option to provide remote learning as an option for our school district kids. The pandemic isn't over yet. While vaccines are giving us hope, children under 12 can be vaccinated yet. The emerging situation with Delta variant presents risks, even with the vaccinated population. I have 2 kids who are not yet eligible to be vaccinated. registered with the school district. I'm sure there are several families who are in a similar situation, and I hope that I'm able to represent them today. A recent change.org petition requesting IPST 204 to provide with the remote learning as an option for kids have received 1,400 signatures from our community. I thus request that the remote learning be offered as an option regardless of medical grounds so that students can continue to have safer learning opportunity. The mitigation options presented as guideline from CDC or state board can only limit the risk to some extent when fully and effectively implemented in schools and districts. Dear board members, school staff, students, and parents, given the population in our schools, I think we clearly see that it is a challenge to implement some of the mitigation strategies like social distancing and/or contact tracing. We see our classroom sizes are larger than most schools. Lunchrooms, hallways, and buses are overcrowded, presenting with lesser to no opportunities to effectively implement these mitigation strategies. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the Children's Hospital Association has jointly published a report of the COVID-19 impacts to children. There has been 4.29 million cases of children in the United States reported to have contracted COVID-19. This is about 14.3% of all cases reported. Based on the reports published on August 5th, 2021, 17,000 children are being treated for COVID-related treatments in the 23 states that has reported the data pertaining to COVID-19 cases in children. It was definitely encouraging to see our kids return to full in-person school last week, but I cannot overcome the fact that just in the last 4 weeks, the net new COVID cases in children in the last 4 weeks alone has more than tripled. Given the population in our schools, that limits our opportunities to implement some of the mitigation strategies effectively. It just contributes to the uptick of COVID-19 cases impacting children and families from our own neighborhood, and hence I urge that we take immediate action in order to protect our children and their family from the effects of the pandemic and the agony or stress that comes with it. I understand that there is limited control or local control over such decisions, but
Thank you very much for your comments.
I just have closing comments. Let's
No, we have-
not open fully until all kids are vaccinated.
to stop after
Please
3
present
minutes.
with a remote learning option so both the unvaccinated
sorry.
and vaccinated kids
You
can
need-
have a more
We're done.
safer learning opportunity.
We're done with
Thank
public
you.
comment. Thank you. We now move to our consent agenda and superintendent report. We'll start with the superintendent report.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue, members of the Board of Education and the Indian Prairie community. Tonight I start my comments knowing that we have finished 3 days of in-person learning, and I'm very excited and pleased by what I have seen visiting the schools. As of today, I've been able to spend time in 16 of our schools and see firsthand the work that our staff are doing to reconnect with the students and help the students connect with each other. It is very evident that our teachers are working collaboratively and sharing teaching strategies with teachers at all grade levels using similar formats in their lessons. Concepts are being taught in similar ways, and lessons reflect a focus on getting to know the students and the students getting to know their teachers. All staff were excited to see their students return, and the energy was infectious as I went from school to school. Students were happy to be in school, and in some of our elementary schools, it was hard to contain the joy from the students as they were running into the building. I want to thank all staff for all they have done and continue to do to make this year positive. I am aware of principals who are in their buildings over the weekend examining ways to increase spacing for students at lunch to not have issues related to quarantine. Issues of quarantine will happen. I'm very appreciative to families who have responded to the calls from our nurses and have provided our nurses with the information needed. Our nurses do not want to make these calls, but they must do so, thanks to the parents who have treated our nurses as professionals. Have things been perfect in our schools over the past 3 days? No, We continue to adjust as necessary. Buses, for example, must be recalibrated to ensure that there are no issues. There is a national bus driver shortage that impacts us. First Student, the company that provides us our bus drivers, has been very responsive to our needs, and we continue to adjust our routes as necessary. We also had a few problems with self-certification on the first day that was quickly resolved by our IT division. This school year, we have been able to add staff at both the school level and in central office level to support our students' academic and social emotional needs. We have been able to reduce our class sizes at the K-2 levels at all of our schools. Though we are still not as small as other school districts, we are closer to that average now than in the past. We used our federal funding to make that reduction possible. We will need to eventually examine all grades, but for now I'm happy that we were able to start at grades K1 and 2. We have also hired a reading coach and a math coach, two people with expertise in the areas of reading and math who will be able to support our teachers and administrators in grades K to 8. We have not had such positions for almost 10 years. Here again, we use federal funding to make that happen. To support our students socially and emotionally, we have hired a social emotional learning and wellness coordinator. This person will help to coordinate mental health supports in the district, as well as address wellness for our students. This position was also hired by using funds from the federal government. We continue to seek out those who are working our lunchroom supervisors and recess. We're also looking for teaching assistants. These positions are vital for the success of our schools. I will end my comments by mentioning why you'll see all of us on stage wearing our Grow Your Own t-shirts. Indian Prairie School District has more than 200 teachers who are former graduates of the district. Whom better to have as teachers are those who went through our school system and saw the value of our district, that they wanted to come back as teachers. Through a grant, we are looking at ways to expand our ability to grow our own teachers. There is a current national teacher shortage, and the more we can do to support our students to come back as teachers, the better we can staff our schools with those who know our values and our culture. Educators across the state are taking part, educators across the district are taking part in the Grow Your Own Teacher program. They are talking, posting, and sharing their personal stories of why they became an educator. Students are reading about and hearing the passion for teaching our staff have for their great profession. 2 weeks from today, we will kick off the next phase of Grow Your Own Teaching program. We are excited to host our very own Grow Your Own Teacher student sign-up Field of Education Career Fair. This kickoff will be on Monday, September 7th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Representatives from local and state universities will be on hand to discuss with students their educational programs. This event is an informal opportunity for our students to learn more about our Grow Your Own program and answer questions they may have about the field of education. Program coordinators from all 3 high schools will be present to answer questions and sign up students into the program for the current year. I'd like us to take a moment to watch this short video about the program.
The Grow Your Own Teacher program is an opportunity for our students to learn and experience what it is like to be an educator. Our ultimate goal is to inspire our students to return and become educators right here in District 204.
There's a couple reasons we're starting the program. One, it's always nice to have teachers who are already familiar with the district and familiar with the community. The second thing is whether people have heard or not heard, there is a teacher shortage, and we want to encourage people to go into this profession.
So we decided to take a proactive response by starting the Grow Your Own Teacher program. We want to provide students with tangible experiences that normally would not be found until they went to college. We have been hard at work this summer with an amazing group of over 30 teachers and administrators that have led the way in both short and long-term planning for this program. We have also been working closely with our Educators Association, IPEA, and we know that over 200 of our current licensed educators are alumni of the district.
It was really important to us to collaborate and explain and work with administration that, you had 200 teachers come back on their own because of the quality of education they received here and because of the relationships the teachers took the time to build.
We know for this program to work, it will take more than a group of 30 or 200 people. It is going to take every single person in our district to help us achieve the results we want. And not only bringing our students back as future teachers, but changing the narrative around what it means to be an educator.
What I'm looking forward to with this program is seeing the kids that come back. For me, it's also kind of fun because some of the teachers that have already returned to come teach, I've taught myself now. So it's been fun to see those kids come back now as well and see what they're able to do and the differences they can make in this district.
Long term, we expect this programming to be part of the Indian Prairie culture. Our mission, to inspire all students to achieve their greatest potential, includes helping those who want to serve in the field of education. We are committed to doing this work that will lay the foundation for the next 200 or 500 alumni who will return to our district to serve in this great profession.
Our teachers who are graduates of the district, they have such a zeal and desire to give back to the place that provided them such a good start in life. It's always great when I see that they're even teaching in the school from which they either graduated or attended, and seeing their pictures on the wall somewhere, it is just amazing. And so we're very happy about this program and about the possibilities that it will bring. I'll now return the meeting to you, Ms. Donahue.
Yeah, it has been very exciting to see this program roll out. So thank you for all of the effort and Dr. Lee for coordinating this and the excitement of seeing all of our teachers come back and knowing that 200 of them are graduates of the district is just phenomenal. So thank you. Okay, next we move to our consent items. Identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I need a motion to approve consent agenda items D through K.
It's Mark Rising. I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items D through K as presented.
Do I have a second? Any comments?
President Donahue, I will abstain from I because I was not here at the past board meeting.
Okay. All right. So we make another motion, is that? No. Okay. So Jeannie, are you ready to call a roll?
1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Jeannie,
Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Mr. Krubis.
Yes.
Ms. Deming.
Aye.
Ms. Grover. Ms. Donahue.
Yes.
Ms. Jane.
Yes.
All right. The motion passes. Next, we move to our action items. I need a motion to approve that's okay. Fiscal year 2022 tentative budget as presented.
I move that the Board of Education approve the tentative budget as presented.
Do you have a second?
I second Natasha Grover.
All right.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Tonight, I am asking that you approve the tentative budget for the 21-22 school year. The legal budget form, as required by the State Board of Education, is now available for viewing at ipsd.org/business office. The public hearing and adoption of the legal budget for the 2021-2022 school year will occur at the September 27th Board of Education meeting. The business office has previously updated the Board of Education and community on the district's financial position during the February, May, and June Board of Education meetings. Tonight's presentation is a natural extension and update of those discussions. Tonight, we will cover the budget goals and priorities, the operating funds budget for the 6 operating funds of the district, the budgets for the 2 non-operating funds, and then finally, we'll cover the next steps for the final budget adoption, as mentioned at the September 27th board meeting. District goal number 3 states that by June 30th of each year, the district will receive the State Board of Education School Financial Profile Designation of Recognition. This is the highest designation awarded by the State Board of Education. As we covered at the June meeting, there are 5 separate financial ratios that are used as criteria for this calculation. We believe the budget as presented will meet all 5 of these criteria and will result in the district receiving recognition status for the 21-22 school year. In addition to the district goals, we've identified these priorities for the 21-22 budget. The first is to support a full return to in-person learning. As you heard during Dr. Talley's update, we are excited to have all students back in our building. We believe we've put together a budget that supports a full return to in-person learning for the full school year. Secondly, we want to continue to ensure an efficient use of taxpayer resources. We recognize that a majority of our funding comes from our local taxpayers in the form of property taxes, and we believe that as a district, we need to continue to be a steward of these funds. Our third priority is to effectively use the federal resources we've been given to address learning loss and support our COVID-19 protocols. We previously covered at the April meeting, and we'll cover a little bit more in detail this evening how we plan on using these COVID-19 relief funds. We plan on, as a priority, addressing capital needs and our deferred maintenance, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later. And finally, the piece that we don't talk a lot about, but is important as a budget official, is that we oversee the effective internal controls and the compliance of the district with various state and federal requirements. We generally attest to this during our annual audit process, which has began, and we will update the board when we receive that audit, generally in November and December. But I will say that with a high level of confidence, we will continue to receive clean audits and demonstrate a high level of internal controls and processes. We covered in more detail at the February meeting how our district stacks up with our comparable districts and the state averages in various financial ratios. So here briefly, I'll point out again that of our 8 comparable districts, Indian Prairie School District 204 has the lowest operating expense per pupil. Shown here at the top are the 2020 operating expense per pupil numbers. These are the most recent that are available for all districts. You can see that Indian Prairie falls 18% below the state average and is anywhere from 12 to 33% below our 8 comparable districts. Simply put, we receive excellent results in a cost-effective and efficient manner. The main driver of this discrepancy as a district that's highly reliant on property taxes is having a relatively low amount of property tax wealth or equalized assessed value when compared to our other districts and compared on a per pupil basis. The second part of this shows that even with moderate increases to the 2021 actuals and the 2022 budget, we still project to be below the state average, and we will likely continue to be below the state average operating expense per pupil for the next several years. So now we'll move on to show the operating budget by fund, and you'll see we have 6 funds. These are all consistent with prior years and are consistent with the State Board of Education's requirements for our financial statement funds. Those have not changed in many years, at least 2 decades. So these are relatively consistent. We generally cover these in total. So this is, I think, the first time the board may be seeing these funds listed individually this year. And so I'll just briefly give an overview on the 6 funds. The education fund is by far our largest fund, and this supports the day-to-day learning and pupil interaction that occurs in our buildings. So this covers everything from teacher and related staff salaries and benefits, significant purchase services and supplies, technology. This supports some of our out-of-district tuition payments, and other support that impacts our students on a day-to-day basis. Our operations and maintenance fund, that funds all the necessary expenditures related to maintaining our facilities. So that includes our custodial contract, custodial supplies, and any sort of routine or day-to-day repairs and maintenance. The transportation fund supports our student transportation. We run over 300 student routes daily to get our students safely to and from school. The IMRF and Social Security Fund is a restricted funding source to deal with those 2 employee benefits specifically. So that's our IMRF pension for our IMRF eligible employees, Social Security, and Medicare payments. Working cash is a restricted fund that can be used really to just support other funds through interfund loans if a fund does have a negative fund balance. We've been fortunate that we've not had to tap that fund in the past, but it is there in times where we potentially have low liquidity in another fund. And then the final fund listed here is our Tort Immunity Fund. This fund covers insurance payments and related expenditures related to insurance coverage and other potential liabilities faced by the district. I'll point out that in total, our operating funds are projected to have a $505,000 surplus over this year. That's $378.8 million in revenue compared to $378.3 million in expenditures. Again, the overwhelming majority of that is in the education fund, with our operations and maintenance and transportation being the other 2 large funds of the district. We do project a slight decrease in the transportation IMRF funds. We do have the ability to modify our property tax levy as appropriate if one fund starts to be low on revenues compared to another fund. So this really is a case where the transportation fund is a little bit higher compared to some of the other funds. We're making a conscious decision to kind of gradually reduce that fund balance. Finally, I'll point out in the far bottom right of this slide shows our fund balance as a percentage of revenues, and we calculate that we'll end the year at 35.0%. The 2 main benchmarks our office looks to when we look at this number is 25 and 17%. Being above 25% is the number that ensures we will receive that recognition status that's mentioned in district goal number 3. So we are above that level, and that's why we are confident this budget will allow us to achieve recognition status. The second number we look at is lower, and that's 17%. That's the number where if the district starts to project annual budgets around that 17% number, where we would potentially have liquidity issues throughout the year. We would look at not only loaning out of our working cash fund to other funds, but we would potentially have to look at taking out some short-term borrowing to get through the year. And I think we covered that a little bit at the February meeting. That's really because our property taxes are received in 2 large installments, and the first of those large installments are received in June. So as the district proceeds through the school year, we sort of gradually spend down a balance until we hit a low point in May. And if we get to where our year-end number is below 17%, that really means when we get to April and May, we're at 0 or potentially negative on that fund balance percentage. This slide looks at all revenue for all 6 of those operating funds. This is generally consistent with prior years. I think as we've already mentioned, property taxes are our largest and most consistent revenue source. Really the most significant change from prior years is the federal revenue. And even though it's only 6%, that's almost double or more than double as it's been in the past. It's usually about 3%. And that really breaks down due to significant increases in 3 programs. The first is the ESSER funding, or those COVID relief dollars. The second one is the federal E-rate program. We're making a conscious decision to use a lot of our federal E-rate dollars this year to support a specific need. And then finally, the USDA granting the food waiver program for the second consecutive year. So we've built into this budget that we will not receive any local revenue as related to food services because all our students will be eligible for free lunch throughout the full school year. Looking at the expenditure highlights in this budget, we have increased our full-time equivalent staffing by 27.8 in this budget. When we initially presented our first forecast in February, we actually had projected a 15 FTE decrease, and that was because that presentation was before we received notification of the latest rounds of COVID-19 relief funds. So as a result of those funds, we've been able to make about a 45 FTE increase for the current year. I will highlight that part of the reason we're able to also hire those staff is because of some savings we've experienced over the last year in our employee benefits. As a result, we project no increase in our employee benefit health insurance expense, and we're able to also pass that savings along to our employees by not having to increase health insurance rates during the 2022 plan year. As you know, we outsource some significant services, including our custodial contract and our transportation contract. Those contractual increases are built into this budget. And then, as mentioned on the last slide, we are using federal E-rate funds to help partially offset a $3.7 million network enhancement. That's the purchase of network switches that'll replace old and outdated network switches throughout all of our buildings. I just wanted to point this out. We had originally hoped to complete this project over the summer and in the 2021 budget year. Unfortunately, this was one of the areas where we were hit by, I think, some of the well-known delays in shipping throughout the tech industry, and so we're now planning on completing this work during this school year. Dr. Talley covered in his update most of these uses for the ESSER II funds. So as he already mentioned, we use them to reduce K through 2 class sizes, and that's directly through the increase in our FTE. We've hired district-wide coordinators for math, literacy, and social emotional learning. We will use these funds to support additional nursing positions and the need for contact tracing. And then we did also use some of these funds to support additional summer 2021 programming. As we've previously covered, we plan on using the two remaining tiers of this relief funding, ESSER II and ESSER III, fairly evenly over the next 3 years. We believe this gives us the best opportunity to maximize the impact of these funds, as well as to avoid a potential funding cliff when these funds run out at the end of fiscal year 2024. The total amount of ESSER funds received, again, for what we're planning over the next 3 years is about $500 per student. I think we did cover at the April meeting as well how this stacks up against other districts. There's a wide variety of districts receiving significantly more funds than us. And again, we covered that. So while we're happy that we're receiving the funds and we believe we've been able to find a way to maximize their use, we do want to continue to make the board and community aware that these funds were not distributed as equitably as we would have liked, and honestly, we feel like there could have been even more uses if we'd received more funding. Moving on to the non-operating budget, I'll start with our bond and interest fund. This fund supports the principal and interest payments on our remaining outstanding debt. We are coming to the tail end of these bond payments, enough that we can fit the remaining bond payments on one slide. So that was, we're excited about that. So you'll see the remaining payments in the right-hand corner there, ending in fiscal year 2027. These payments are fully supported by property taxes. They are all fixed interest rate debt with fixed maturity, so we know with 100% certainty what those payments are going to be. And again, we are starting to get to the tail end of these bond payments. These are the bonds that really built the facilities and built the infrastructure that is the district today. So this supported a lot of capital investment in our buildings and facilities throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. The second of our non-operating fund is our capital projects fund. This fund does not have a dedicated funding source that's at least consistent or significant between years. The only funding source for this fund is developer contributions that are made when developers build new property or do any other building activity that increases the potential student count to the district. As you can see, we estimate that to be just under $1 million for the current year. So really the source of this fund has been operating transfers, land sales. We were able to sell a few vacant parcels of land several years ago that the district determined we no longer needed to build schools that had originally been contributed by developers. And again, those are the two main sources that are building up that beginning fund balance of approximately $43.5 million. For the current year, we have $9 million of anticipated capital expenditures. We did cover these at the June meeting, I believe, but we are planning on upgrading and replacing the fleet of smartboards throughout our classrooms. We are looking at upgrading and modernizing the copiers that are on our buildings, which are also past their useful life. We are restarting our elementary air conditioning projects. That's a $3.5 million project to finish the air conditioning at all our elementary schools. And then finally, we will have funds left over to address some other deferred maintenance needs during the summer of 2022. With that said, we do recognize there are some challenges with our capital funds and our long-term planning for our capital expenditures with our facilities. The first is already mentioned. There's no consistent revenue source to support our capital needs. We have been reliant on those operating transfers. And as previously covered, we're already at the lowest operating expenditure per pupil among our peer group. So that's not a reliable source or a source that, quite frankly, we can anticipate on using without it impacting our classroom. We currently estimate that our deferred or past due maintenance is $37.2 million. So even though we have a $43 million balance in there, that would not be enough to complete the work that we have scheduled and also catch up on that deferred maintenance work already. That's in addition to a recommended annual spending to maintain our buildings of $11.4 million. So we're really looking at having about a 3 to 4 year amount of annual expenditures left in that capital projects fund. For the record, these numbers are based on our best estimates. The last time we did a full comprehensive facility study was in 2014. And so I'll say, like some of our facility needs, that study is also a little past due, and we'll potentially be coming to the board in December or early in the winter to request completing an updated facility study. Really as a result of deferring some of this maintenance, we've seen limited funding available for aesthetics and to support 21st century learning. I do want to emphasize, however, that we have made all necessary safety and building envelope investments into our buildings. Our buildings are a safe place for learning. We have prioritized air circulation and different changes as a direct result of COVID-19. Our air filtration systems are up to date and using the filters recommended. But where we do have needs are in the building aesthetics area and in areas that really do directly impact the classroom and our ability to offer a modern learning environment. With that said, we will be presenting a more comprehensive analysis of our current capital infrastructure and our needs and our assessment or plan for the future at the December 2021 board meeting. So with that said, I'll just reiterate that our legal budget is now posted at ipsd.org/business office and is available for public viewing. At the September 27th Board of Education meeting, we will start the evening with a budget public hearing, and then that will follow during the regular board meeting with the board approving our 2021-2022 budget. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, we are starting to work through our fiscal year 2021 audit. We do expect no issues and historically have received clean audit reports, but we will update the board on that as it progresses as well. So with that, I will take any questions.
Ms. Grover? No? Mr. Karubis?
Thank you for the presentation. Page 12, slide 12 is my area of focus. Administration should recommend options to the board for reducing the deferred maintenance and for a budget that is in line with the recommended annual spending to maintain the buildings. When we did the last study in 2014, the facilities study, the recommended annual spend was 8.6. You can see that the recommended annual spend is increasing and will likely continue to increase. The deferred maintenance is very troubling based on a budget of our size. We have a liability, and we're borrowing from our buildings, and we shouldn't continue to do so. So we need a plan to repay that debt and not continue to dig that hole. And I am confident you'll be able to do that, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Jan?
Slide 5, please. Slide 5. Yeah, I just appreciate this slide because I feel like this slide really frames our understanding of district finances. As I began to familiarize myself with district finances, this was the starting point for me to try to understand it. And so I really do appreciate the explanation you gave with regard to where we stand with our nearby districts and then with the state average, because I really do think that paints a clear picture of the amount of scrutiny that goes into what you presented today. So thank you for highlighting that. And I have no other questions. Thanks.
Ms. Dumming?
Slide 3, please. And I'm so pleased, and I know we are pleased with the anticipated recognition status. Can you share, I think it's just important for our community to understand how often we receive that recognition status?
Sure. We've been fortunate to receive the recognition status the last several years. There were a few years in the recent past, within the last 5 or 6 years, where we did have a year or two where we received review, which is the next level down. Really, what's driving our ability to reach recognition status at this point is I'd say two things. We pointed out the fund balance as a percentage of revenues. That is one of the indicators that is the highest percentage. That combined with that, we are starting to pay down our bonds. So when we were struggling to reach recognition status or had a year or two with review status, it really was because we still had a fairly high debt amount outstanding. But now that amount has gone lower, I'm confident that we will continue to reach recognition status both in 2022 and going forward.
Thank you for that. And slide 11, I know this was, there's an area on here that was very near and dear to Board Member Karubis's heart, and certainly Board Member Rising, because they've been here for the longest amount of time on our board. Elementary air conditioning, that's something that we have, even when I joined the board and President Donahue, something that we've been talking about and had been such a long-term project. So happy to see that we're coming near to the completion. Do we have an idea how many more years? Is this the final, will this be the final one or not?
Sure. So we'll probably be doing the work over the next 2 summers. So summer of 2022 and summer of 2023. We maybe saved the best for last. The LMCs are sort of the most complex piece of that project because it's obviously the largest space. It does involve going in and doing some work in the duct work and above those areas. So we do have it over 2 summers. That's consistent with what the initial plan was. I think if other board members remember, we did have on the March 17th, 2020 board agenda the approval of the final stage of elementary air conditioning. And as we know, that was right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately had to postpone that project 2 summers. So we are as excited as the board is to finally complete that project.
And for those families who have children in elementary school, further this week is expected to be another really warm one. Those of us who've had elementary students who have had to sit in, the teacher's lounge or move from their classroom, especially those on the 2nd floor, this project continued focus is extremely appreciated on behalf of all of our parents, especially our elementary ones. So thank you for that. And just the last thing I just wanted to reiterate, Board Member Carubas's comment, one that he shared so much regarding deferred maintenance. And that's an area that certainly I wanted to ask, were we in any jeopardy with any of our buildings? You answered that, so thank you for ensuring that even though the maintenance, we do have deferred maintenance, that our buildings are safe, remain safe, so thank you for that.
Yeah, we do prioritize building work, and safety is number one. So we have prioritized any work that relates to the safety of the building. Again, unfortunately, just given our position, that's not left a lot of money for aesthetics or in some cases the fun stuff. The money that we do spend on buildings, unfortunately, is in some of the stuff you don't even see.
Thank you.
Ms. Fosdick.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say I don't envy you your job for this task. It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle, and I appreciate the care and attention you've given to putting this together and making it available for the community to look through it if they have any questions.
Mr. Reisen.
Can you go back to slide 5 again? I just wanted to touch on the operating expense per pupil again. Excuse me. So you had brought up, Matt, how we were 18% less than the state average. I actually went back and looked at 2014 as compared to 2021. And in 2014, we were 11.6% lower than the state average. So even with the additional funding from the state of Illinois, we are still trying to play catch up. And while I bring that up is not to complain, but to let our community and our taxpayers know how much and how efficient we are with our money in our district. Yes, all of our taxes are high in the state of Illinois. And we rely 15% of our budget approximately on the state of Illinois. What the community does not know and does not recognize sometimes is that Illinois, the state, funds education number 50th in the country. Now, that's the state funding public education, not the taxpayers, but the state. Illinois is 50th. And that's why property taxes are so high. So why I like focusing on this particular slide is for what we have of our local resources, which the state recognizes we're 80%, we have 80% of the money we need to operate our district at 100%. So in all these districts you look at, we have the least amount of local revenue resources to fund our district. We're at 80%, and all of our comparable districts at a higher percentage than we are. We are arguably probably one of the most efficient districts in the state based on what we can offer our students, what they have, and the education that they can get, and the sports and the activities. You know, I know as Ms. Deming had mentioned, me and Mr. Karubas, you know, Justin had come on in 2014, just after we went through 5 years of cutting over $40 million of our budget. You know, those were some rough years when finances, and I was here a couple more years than Justin, when state resources were frozen. You know, so to see where we were then and where we are now, while it may look like we are in the same position, what we've been able to accomplish with the air conditioning and all the things that you listed, you know, a couple times we did have to go once into the fund balances for technology, way back in I think 2013 or 14. But our community should be extremely proud for the money that they're getting for the taxes that they pay in this school district, because it is by far better what they're getting in equal districts. And I should also mention too that you also hear about administrators a lot, and there are 850 school districts in the state of Illinois, and I believe at last count, Indian Prairie School District ranked 835 out of 850 of the least amount of administrators per pupil. That means we have a lot less administrators than a lot of other districts have. Now, Dr. Talley might argue that's not necessarily a good thing sometimes, but it shows you once again how we are very conscious of our taxpayers and very efficient with our money. So, Matt, thank you for all your work on this. I know this is your first year presenting a budget to us as our chief business official, and you know, your predecessors have done a wonderful job, as I know you will. So thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Also, thank you to my fellow board members for their comments and questions. I think that we are constantly asked about what are we doing to save money instead of just spending it as it comes in. And I think some of the comments shared just now were a very good representation. I guess you pointed it out earlier, some of the major savings that we received in the last year or so was changing our health insurance company. I also wanted to go back to slide 10. So often people will bring up, you know, why can't you refinance these bonds? And I've asked that in the past or whatever. And we early, with my service on the board, we refinanced these several times. And I think that what everyone should know is that we have maxed out. We can't refinance them anymore. We have achieved savings from those efforts, and now we have to move forward with what we have, correct?
That's correct. And I'll point out, I think the highest interest rate we're paying on any bond right now, I think, is 4.5%. That can double check that, but we do have bonds that are under 2%. So we really have taken every advantage of savings. Generally, the way that municipal bonds are structured is that you issue them over a 20 or 30 year period, and you get an opportunity to refinance every 10 years. So in our case, our last remaining debt, the one that's due in 2027, that's a bond that was issued in 2007. It's the bond that sort of built the facility we're in today, Mattia Valley. We refinanced that in 2017. That was our last bond. That was our last chance to refinance. We locked in a very low rate on that bond. And as you mentioned, from here on out, we're just making the payments as they come due. I'll point out one other thing. There's actually, there were actually, at one time, there was some other refinancing options that we had, but there was a recent tax law change, I believe, with the Trump tax cuts in 2017, which actually took away what was known as an advanced refunding. So that was one other refunding opportunity there's now one less opportunity than we had even before. So this is our debt. This is the remaining debt that's outstanding. We don't have opportunities to refinance it. We don't have opportunities to issue additional debt without a referendum. So as I sit here today, this is what it is. And again, we know, so we know down to the dollar what our debt service is through fiscal year 2027.
Well, I know we're very careful at counting our pennies in this district, and this represents large pennies to us, so I know you've been carefully watching it over the years, so thank you for that. And I know that they were refinanced also with no extension on the term of the bond, so that's also a congratulations.
Correct, yeah. Every time we've done a refinancing, it's been important to our office to keep the maturity the same, so we've refinanced in a way that provides taxpayer savings without extending the length of the bond.
I also support the comments that were made about our capital and maintenance budget. I worry about that tremendously, and we need to look for ways that we can continue to more aggressively address that and make sure that we're not sinking more into the deferred maintenance mode that we've had to live with over the past X number of years, so thank you. All right, any other discussion? Okay. Jeannie, will you call a roll?
Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Ms. Grover.
Yes.
Mr. Karubis.
Yes.
Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Ms. Deming.
Aye.
Ms. Jane.
Yes.
Ms. Donahue.
Yes. The motion passes. Now I need a motion to approve Battelle for Kids as the strategic plan facilitator as presented.
I move, this is Susan Deming, I move for the approval of Battelle for Kids as our strategic plan facilitator as presented.
I second.
All right. Will you present
All right.
this too?
Hello again.
Yeah.
So good evening, Board of Education members. This evening, I'm recommending the district board approve Battelle for Kids as the facilitator and consultant to assist the district in completing a 5-year strategic plan. Our district is fortunate to have talent and dedicated teachers, support staff, principals, and most importantly, students in our buildings. We are also fortunate to have a board and community committed to our stated mission and vision, including our Portrait of a Graduate, our SEL statements, and our equity belief statement. A strategic plan serves as the vital link between the day-to-day learning occurring in our schools and these district-wide goals, values, and mission. Administration recommends beginning strategic plan work in January 2022 with the expectation of having a strategic plan completed by the start of the 22-23 school year. This will allow the strategic plan to build off the work currently being done by our boundary study. And this will be the district's first strategic plan. We believe the assistance of a national leader in educational leadership will be beneficial as we complete this plan. In their role, Battelle for Kids will facilitate visioning sessions with the district and building administrators, conduct community engagement sessions, perform a district-wide SWOT analysis, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, assist in drafting the strategic plan, and then finally provide implementation support and feedback. Battelle for Kids previously worked with the district to complete the Portrait of a Graduate. This portrait will be one of the guiding principles for much of this work. As part of their services, Battelle will re-engage with the portrait and assist the district in increasing awareness and engagement with the portrait across all schools and levels. We believe that the portrait is applicable to all students at all of our levels, and this re-engagement and strategic planning process will reiterate this message. The district issued a request for proposals in May 2021 for strategic planning facilitation, and we received 8 proposals. A team of administrators evaluated 8 proposals and held interviews with 3 finalists. Based on the RFP issued and the interview process, administration recommends Battelle for Kids to assist in completing our 5-year strategic plan.
All right. Is there any discussion? I'm not going to call on everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that what I really liked about this company when I really dug into it was, well, first of all, we used them for Portrait of a Graduate. And again, that wasn't the determining factor. They actually gave us a really good price too, because we bid this out, and like you had mentioned, Matt, so many people bid on it. But I like that they have the experience with our district with Portrait of a Graduate. But what I really like that I saw is that they really reach out to the community, to our parents, to our school staff, to our faith leaders, to our community leaders, to really get an idea. And I think, Dr. Talley, you hadn't even brought this up or mentioned this when you and I were talking about that could our administration conduct a strategic plan? Probably, but we, again, as I mentioned in my previous comments, we are very understaffed as far as administrators go. And what this company really allows us to do, because they have the experience, they can look at all aspects of our district and kind of lay out that strategic plan. So, yeah, thanks for the work. This is exciting, and this is something that our district has never had. Yeah.
Any other comments?
Just a very quick comment. Pleased that we are moving forward with the strategic plan. I can't think of existing in the corporate spectrum without seeing a strategic plan to lead a company in knowing where they're headed and where they're going. And if we want to make sure that we're following a strong path for the best for our students and staff and our community, we really need to be focused on looking at where we are now, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there in the best way possible. So I'm excited about this. And the only thing that I would say, as we're working with them, I see a couple of opportunities where meetings are virtual, and I know the disclaimers and the challenges with the period that we're in now, but any time that we can safely facilitate in-person meetings would be very advantageous, I feel, versus virtual.
Thanks. Yes, the plan is for those community engagement sessions to be in person.
Madam President, I have one comment.
Sure.
Susan, do you want to talk at all about possibly our consideration of an equity plan might fall into this as well? You had some comments on that before.
Well, the only thing that I would say is we are Justin and I have been working with Dr. Talley and our equity executive director in understanding, after we've launched our equity statement, making sure that it is as inclusive as possible. And certainly as we move forward, that strategic plan is going to embody everything that our district is looking at moving forward with, and understanding the role that equity plays, understanding the role that our academics, understanding the role that everything plays. But certainly, Justin, to your point, the equity initiatives that will be inclusive and beneficial for our district should definitely be falling under and inclusive of that strategic plan. So thank you, Justin.
I'll just add, I think to the power of a strategic plan is doing some of what you mentioned, talking with the community, having conversations with the board, looking at all of our information over the last few years to determine where we've been, where are we now, and where are we trying to go. And I think the fact that we have that equity statement from the board is very powerful to help in determining some of the aspects of our strategic plan. And then the work of the equity plan that has started can be incorporated in. We, will determine what our strategic plan is all about. And to Mr. Rising's comment, I think if this were not the first time that we were doing a strategic plan, I think it could be done, amended by staff who are involved. But you are right, we have a very thin bench, if you will. It's not a lot of people in central office to do that work, in addition to everything else that they're doing. So I'm glad we have the company to do this. It just happened to be the company that did the work we've done before on Portrait of a Graduate. And I'll end by saying this. I don't want to throw out the work we did with Portrait of a Graduate. I think that's important discussion. A lot of work was done. I wasn't here for it. But I think it's important that we continue that work as we go forward.
Thank you for doing a thorough analysis. You looked at 8 different companies before selecting 3 for finalists and then selecting this one. So, you really went through and looked at what each company had to offer, and that's important for us to select for our district. Look forward to having our first ever strategic plan in July of 2022. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jeannie, will you call a roll?
Ms. Deming.
Aye.
Ms. Jane.
Yes.
Mr. Karubis.
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Mr. Rising. Ms. Donahue.
Yes.
Ms. Grover.
Yes.
The motion passes. So our next item is legislative advocacy and education, Board of Education update. So I know Ms. Grover has some information to share.
Sure. So IASB has a resolution process every year. So this year, IPSD submitted a belief statement. So Ms. Jane and I went to Springfield to discuss our belief statement because IASB allows position statements as well as belief statements. And our belief statement had to do with the learning and completion of assignments. And the reason, I'll read you the belief statement, but the rationale behind the belief statement was because IASB during remote learning had come up and they said that learning and social emotional learning was important. And in its guidelines, IASB had asked for empathy from its teachers and compassion, and it allowed some flexibility in grading. So the belief statement was that IASB believes that school districts should prepare all students to succeed and cultivate learning. To that end, IASB urges school districts to consider adopting a policy encouraging students to complete assignments within a reasonable time frame, even after the due date, by developing guidelines how to grade a student's late assignments. So there was some discussion because we had also indicated some language stating that a student should not have an automatic 0. And there was concern that it might seem that the teachers would not be allowed to have leeway in grading. So we left it with guidelines how to grade a student's late assignment, because the crux of it is we want to encourage learning. We want to encourage a student to turn in the assignment. So it passed unanimously. And it was about a half an hour discussion with Ms. Jane and myself defending our belief the IAPSD belief statement. And the next step is in September, it will be, school boards will be voting on it. And in November at the delegate assembly, they will probably put it in a consent agenda item. And if a district wants to pull it out, they can. And at that time, if a district pulls it out, then I would be arguing for it, but unless they don't pull it out, it will just be part of the consent agenda item. So it was really exciting. It was the first time we did this, and it's really interesting because you heard other belief statements and other position statements. So it was.
And I just want, sorry, Lauren. I know you were very passionate about this, Natasha, so. And I know this wasn't exactly the wording you wanted, but I think what it was decided on by the resolution committee, and we'll see if they choose to adopt or not adopt. But it allows the districts to formulate what is best for their district. And I think all school boards want students to be accountable and responsible, but the end goal is to make sure students learn. And that's really why I thought this was so important as a belief statement. So thanks for your passion on that.
And it was very dear because for me, it was the students, like we talk about equity, we talk about, and we saw this during remote learning where some students didn't want to turn in their cameras or couldn't turn in assignments because they were struggling. So it allows the school district local authority to come up with its guidelines for late assignments. So that's what I think everybody was unanimous about, and that's why they all were for it, because it allowed, like you said, local decision making. Ms. Jane, do you have anything to add?
No, that I was happy to join the ride and accompany board member Grover, and it was a very interesting process, and the panel understood the gist of the statement. It was more of a semantics argument on wordings and ensuring that this was not disempowering teachers, but empowering them to have more leeway so that students would maybe become their own advocates and ask for extensions and try to finish assignments rather than getting the automatic 0. And the panel understood that and really helped us get to this point. So congratulations to Natasha Grover for getting that passed.
Yeah, very, very thrilled, Ms. Grover, that you pursued this because, on top of your work, family, and all the normal board work, it's extra credit to go after something that's important to you. But also, our board has a history ever since I've been on the board of pursuing position statements or belief statements with Illinois Association of School Boards, and every year we have been successful in getting something passed. So we're influencers at the state level, and you are continuing that track record, and I hope that this also will pass as the other ones did in previous years, so thank you. Are there any other updates on the different committees? Or I think Ms. Fosdick, you might have a few words.
Would you like to share, Mr. Krubis? Okay. We are still working on the student representative proposal possibility. We'd like to try and find a way to make sure that we can hear student voice and have some student participation in some way. But right now we're planning to speak with some other districts to learn about how it works for them and what it looks like for them, so that if we do find a way to move forward, that we are thoughtful and careful and do it right.
Anything else?
Just a quick update, the boundary the boundary team continues to meet, and just want to assure the community that no decisions at all have been made, and the community will have a chance to hear the different proposals before any decisions are made, and have a chance to provide their input. So I know that I've seen a little concern that decisions are being made about schools. There are no decisions at all at this time. We're still in a learning and a discussion process, and do know that this process is going to continue through the early part of 2022. So you will have an opportunity to have a listening tour and understand what is being looked at, and to provide input and feedback.
Thank you. Very important topic. So thank you. Yes, no decisions have been made, and we have frequent meetings. I think there's another one this week, right? So, all right, with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Second. Is there a second?
Second.
We are adjourned.
Aye.